The Whitmore estate emerged from morning fog like a forgotten dream, its Gothic towers piercing the gray sky above Monterey's cliffs. Emily Thompson arrived at dawn, her worn sneakers silent on the marble steps as she entered through the service door. 3 years she had worked here, 3 years of polishing silver that would never tarnish and dusting portraits of dead Whitmores who seemed to watch her with disapproval. Richard Whitmore lived in this palace like a ghost in his own house. The billionaire hotel magnate moved through rooms with calculated precision, schedule organized to the second, his emotions locked away tighter than his art collection. Emily had learned his patterns: Colombian coffee at 6, business calls. Until noon, solitary dinners in the vast dining room where 20 chairs sat empty around him. She was invisible to him, just another piece of furniture that kept his world functioning. That's how she preferred it. Invisibility was safety. The orphanage loud girls disappeared into the system's cracks. Quiet ones survived.
Oh.
But this morning felt different. As Emily arranged fresh orchids in the foyer, she noticed Richard watching her from the library doorway, not looking past her or through her, but at her. His gray eyes held something she couldn't identify, and when their gazes accidentally met, neither looked away immediately. "Ah, sir," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the cavernous space. He stepped closer, his expensive shoes echoing on marble. "What's your name?" The question stunned her. After 3 years, he didn't know her name. "Emily Thompson, sir." He nodded once as if filing away information, then disappeared into his study. Emily's hands trembled as she finished with the flowers. Something had shifted in that moment, something that felt both dangerous and inevitable. That evening, she found herself humming while cleaning the library fireplace, an old lullaby from her childhood. She didn't notice the figure watching from behind the bookshelves, didn't see the way Richard Whitmore's expression softened as he listened to the melody that was the first genuine sound he'd heard in his house for years. 2 weeks later, Butler's words echoed in Emily's mind like a mistake she must have misheard. "Mr. Whitmore wishes to see you in the drawing room immediately." She stood before the ornate doors, her reflection ghostly in the polished wood. Her uniform smelled of lemon wax and floor soap, her hands still damp from morning cleaning. When she entered, Richard stood by the fireplace, holding a crystal glass of water, his profile sharp against the flames. "I need you to come with me tomorrow night," he said without preamble, his voice calm and absolute. Emily blinked.
Sir?
"To the Golden Phoenix charity ball?" The words hung in the air like an impossible riddle. She almost laughed, thinking it was some kind of test. But Richard's expression remained unchanged, not cruel, not amused, just certain. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You don't have to. Just be ready by 7. That evening, Emily found a long box on her narrow bed in the servants' quarters. Inside lay a gown the color of midnight, shimmering with tiny crystal beads like stars scattered across an infinite sky. Fabric was impossibly soft, the cut precise and elegant. A handwritten note lay beside it in neat cursive, where this: "No one can look away from what dares to be seen." Roar, she held the dress against herself, staring at her reflection in the small mirror above her dresser. The girl looking back was both familiar and foreign. For the first time in her life, Emily Thompson didn't look like someone trying to disappear. But fear gripped her chest. What if it was a trick? What if he wanted to humiliate her in front of his world? She remembered the orphanage's cold lessons about knowing your place, about staying invisible to survive. Late that night, she finally slipped the dress over her frame. The fabric was cool against her skin, and she stood straighter, breathed deeper. In the mirror, she saw someone the world could not afford to ignore. Outside her window, fog rolled in from the ocean. And somewhere in the mansion's depths, Richard Whitmore sat in his study, wondering what tomorrow night would bring. For the first time in years, he smiled. The Golden Phoenix Hotel glittered like a palace, its grand staircase spilling golden light across marble floors. High society moved through the halls with practiced grace, their conversations woven with names, deals, and gossip that shaped the world's invisible currents. Emily stepped from the black car, her midnight blue gown catching the light like captured starlight. She had styled her hair in soft waves, wearing only a single silver bracelet she'd found years ago in a forgotten drawer. The girl in the mirror that morning had looked like someone reborn. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A mystery. Woman on Richard Whitmore's arm, more elegant than most of the heiresses in attendance. Photographers snapped pictures. Conversations halted mid-sentence. The whispering began immediately. "Who is she?" Someone murmured. "Must be European nobility. No American girl walks like that. I heard she saved his life in a car accident." Emily walked beside Richard up the staircase, past rows of people whose names graced magazine covers and charity foundations. She didn't smile or shrink. She simply existed, fully and beautifully, and that alone made her magnetic at the ballroom's entrance. The announcer's voice boomed. "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Richard Whitmore and his guest, Miss Emily Thompson." Was the first time her name had echoed off marble walls and crystal chandeliers. 1,000 eyes turned toward them.
Ow.
Richard leaned close to her ear, ready. Her throat tightened. "No." He smiled, the first genuine smile she'd ever seen from him. "Good." They descended into the ballroom, and the music seemed to pause. Every step felt like a choice, a rebellion against every voice that had told her she wasn't enough. At the bottom of the staircase, Richard extended his hand. "May I?" Emily hesitated, then placed her hand in his. They danced to a slow waltz, her steps cautious at first, then growing more confident as his steady movements guided her. Around them, the elite watched with champagne untouched and conversations forgotten. She wasn't perfect. Her heel caught her hem once, and her rhythm faltered. But she didn't apologize or run. And Richard never looked away from her eyes, as if the world had finally shown him something new. When the music ended, there was no applause, just stunned silence. Then the speculation exploded like wildfire across the ballroom, each whisper sharper than the last. The whispers followed Emily like shadows as she moved through the ballroom. A dozen narratives had been invented for her. Foreign countess, political connection, hired actress, mysterious savior. None came close to the truth. "She must be European," someone said near the bar. "Only royalty walks with that poise." "I heard she's a pharmaceutical heiress," whispered a woman in silver. Richard's playing the long game. The third voice, sharp with disdain. "That girl's just his newest amusement." Gregory Haynes, a PR manager for one of Richard's subsidiaries, cornered Emily by the refreshment table. His smile held no warmth. "Miss Thompson, isn't it? May I ask what?" "Exactly you do?" Emily met his gaze steadily. "I work at the Whitmore estate." Doing what? Exactly. The question hung between them like a trap. Around them, conversations quieted as people leaned closer to hear her answer. Emily lifted her chin. "I'm a maid." The silence was deafening. Then came the explosion of whispers, gasps, and barely concealed laughter. Gregory's eyebrows shot up in surprise, then amusement, then something nastier. "Well," he said smoothly, "I suppose we all start somewhere." But Emily didn't flinch. She had survived worse than the cruelty of polite society. Every woman in the room suddenly felt off balance, as if she had broken some sacred rule. Every married man watched her with new interest, seeing strength where they'd expected shame. She excused herself and walked to the balcony, needing air. The city lights glittered below like spilled gold, and she gripped the marble railing, letting the cool stone ground her. Behind her, she heard muffled voices through the glass doors. "Richard Whitmore doesn't fall in love. He invests. Heard she used to be homeless. He probably picked her up on the way here." The words didn't crush her, but they cracked something inside. Her hands began to tremble. They shouldn't have said that. Emily turned to find Elizabeth Crawford, one of the city's most respected philanthropists, standing in the doorway. The older woman's face was kind but serious. "My dear," Elizabeth said softly, "you've just done something extraordinary. You told the truth in a room full of people who've forgotten what that looks like." Lies. Emily's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "They'll never accept me," she whispered. Elizabeth smiled. "Acceptance isn't the point, darling. Respect is. And tonight, whether they admit it or not, you've earned theirs." Richard found Emily on the balcony 20 minutes later, her silhouette elegant against the city lights. He had heard the whispers, seen the shocked faces when she revealed her truth. His chest tightened with something unfamiliar. Protectiveness. "I should have warned you how cruel they could be," he said, joining her at the railing. Emily turned to face him, and he was struck again by her composure. No tears, no defeat, just quiet strength that humbled him. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked. "Really?" Richard was quiet for a long moment, watching fog roll in from the ocean. "'Cause in 3 years, you're the only person in my house who never wanted anything from me. He never tried to impress me, or manipulate me, or take something. You're just ... real. And you thought bringing me here would change what, exactly?" He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "I thought it might change me." Inside the ballroom, the whispers had evolved. What started as shock had become something else entirely. The woman who had dared to tell the truth, who had walked among them without apology or shame, had become the most talked about person at the most exclusive event of the year. "She's magnificent." Elizabeth Crawford was telling a small group of influential women, honest in a world of facades, could learn from her. A famous actress nodded thoughtfully. "Did you see how she danced? Like she belonged everywhere?" "Nowhere, all at once." Even Gregory Haynes found himself reassessing. He'd expected her to crumble under scrutiny, but she'd stood taller instead. That took a rare kind of courage. When Emily and Richard returned to the ballroom, something had shifted. People still stared, but differently now. Some with newfound respect, others with curiosity rather than condescension. She was no longer just Richard's mysterious guest. She was Emily Thompson, a woman who had redefined what it meant to belong. 3 months later, Emily still worked at the Whitmore estate, but everything had changed. Richard had enrolled her in evening classes at the local college. She was studying literature and business, her quick mind hungry for knowledge she'd been denied. The mansion felt different too. Richard no longer ate alone. Emily joined him for dinner, their conversations ranging from books to dreams to the strange dance of two souls learning to trust. One evening, as rain tapped against the library windows, Richard found her reading by the fireplace. She looked up and smiled, and he realized that somewhere between that first dance and this quiet moment, he had found something he'd never thought possible. Not just love, but home. Emily closed her book and moved to the window, watching the ocean beyond the cliffs. "I never thanked you properly," she said. "For what?" She turned to face him, and in her eyes he saw not gratitude but understanding. "For seeing me before I learned to see myself." 6 months later, their engagement announcement appeared in the society pages. There were still whispers, still people who would never understand how a maid became a mogul's bride. But Emily Thompson had learned something that night at the Golden Phoenix Ball. The only approval that mattered was her own. On their wedding day, as she walked down the aisle of the estate's garden chapel, she thought of the scared girl who had once scrubbed floors in silence. That girl had always been worthy of love, respect, and dreams as vast as the ocean beyond. The cliffs. She just needed to learn to believe it. Asterisk, the ideal. Like this video if the story touched your heart. Subscribe for more emotional tales, and share with someone who believes in the power of true love. And let us know in the comments. Today, love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.